very pleased to welcome to Sounds Organised this week my special guest, the legendary Bryan Rodwell.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Bryan, your career spans a heck of a number of years. Where did it all start, your musical career?
Well, of course, you see, my father was a very, very excellent musician, so it really all started there. I was lucky. I managed to get things like scholarships, and then I think probably the most interesting thing was that I managed to get with a guy that was probably one of the three greatest theatre organists we've ever had in this country, a fellow called Charles Saxby. And I spent quite a time with him as his assistant at the Paramount in Leeds. And of course, apart from him being a heck of a great fellow, he was one of this country's finest classical organists. So, you know, it was an absolute joy to be with him, and we used to open the theatre at 10 o'clock in the morning in dinner jackets. That was an insistence on his part. And then the rest of the day we used to sit down in the dressing room with two pianos and work. And it was absolutely marvellous. That's really where it all started.
So you were obviously very heavily influenced by the classical organ initially.
Oh, very much so, very much so. And if you said, what's my first love, I would say classical organ without any doubts at all.
How highly then does the electronic organ scene rate?
Well, it's got to rate, hasn't it, really? Because, I mean, let's face it, without it, we wouldn't have a lot of organ music happening in this country. I think, classically speaking anyway, the electronic organ is an absolutely superb alternative. It's not a substitute. You can never substitute pipes. But where, you know, maybe a small church with not a great deal of funding, they can enjoy a good solid organ sound from an electronic. So it's better to have it that way than none at all.
You've been through various stages of popularity as far as organ music is concerned, Bryan. Mm-hmm. Do the 1980s figure that high as against the old days? Yeah, without a doubt, because there's more happening. I mean, you've only got to look at these two instruments we've got here today. They're a far cry from the old C3 Hammonds, although, after saying that, it's still one hell of a sound, and nobody's managed to recreate it as yet. They all said they have, but they haven't, you know. So yeah, it is a lot different. It's a lot different. Fortunately, we've got a lot of younger people coming. I mean, I'm talking like an old grandfather, which of course I am a grandfather, but I'm not all that old. But you know, a lot of exciting new people coming in. I mean, Captain Flint's here with us tonight, you know, and of course he's one hell of a young player, you know. You look at Tim on that side of it. You look on the other side of the fence, which is more towards the theatre organ. Where could you have a better player in his age group than Nigel Ogden? In my book, the most underrated player in this country on theatre organ, and also on electronic when he gets his head down, you know. Yes, indeed.
So no, there's a lot of very exciting things happening.
Let's add a few more instruments then to the organ, Bryan, and talk about your obvious interest with brass groups and the organ as well. How did that come about?
Well, you see, I'm a frustrated brass player. My wife, if she was here, she would nod her head in approval, because I've sat for hours with a trombone and a trumpet trying to play it. And I suppose, really, if we went really far back, you see, my grandfather and my father were two of this country's finest brass players. And so I suppose it's steeped in. But you see, these days, to take a big band out on the road, where you've got 5 saxes and all the rest of it, it makes for a lot of money. A heck of a lot. So what we've done, which suits me fine, is we've said, all right, we'll let the keyboards take the sax parts, and we'll leave the brass where they are. Well, that's all well and good doing that, and you've got to do the copies of the copies of the copies, you know, the Millers and the Hermans and things like that. You've got to do that to satisfy the general public. But I honestly feel that to do something that is new and in a different way, then we might be achieving something rather than just copying,
Yes.
which, you know. But, I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, brass is the greatest thing, and when you get good brass on an organ, then, you know, it's really terrific. You know, it suits me down to the ground.
How do the crowds, the audiences, react when they see the brass and the electronic organ on stage together? Are they a little bit reluctant to accept it at first sight?
Well, of course, you'll always get that crew, won't you, that will say, you know, I mean, you get it, look, if you've got a pipe organ playing at the same time as an electronic organ, then somebody's bound to say, well, oh, but you see, we prefer pipes and we prefer electronic. Fine, great. There's no reason that they can't mix. I mean, if you remember, Nigel Ogden and I myself, we did some lovely tracks using electronic and pipes, so they do mix, and one's no good without t'other. Because, I mean, if you look back, you couldn't have had electronic organs without pipe organs. And with the modern electronics that are now going into pipe organs, the cheek jowl, the moving backwards and forwards. So you'll always get this thing, and particularly when they see, you know, the organ amongst, you know, 9 brass and 3 rhythm, they think, you know, oh dear me, this is not the organ, you know. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. What we're doing, we're using the organ and the brass to try and create a new sound, a different sound, and still keep the organ to the front.
Yes.
Because that is still the important thing in my life. I think it works, but you'll get those that'll say, oh dear me, no, can't have that, you know. You get them.
How do festivals aspire in your estimation?
Well, to be quite honest with you, Ian, I've never been involved in a lot of them. It's not my fault. It's just that I haven't been asked. And I mean, that's a fact. I think that festivals are a great idea. The only thing that worries me is that they might lose their initial intention and go away from the strict meaning of the word festival. And there are some which are a commercial enterprise, but there are those that are done where the interest of the person interested in the organ is put paramount, and that is then the true idea of a festival. But where it becomes a commercial venture, purely and simply, then it loses all purpose, in my book.
Over the years, Bryan, there must be more than one highlight in your musical career. Do you have any favourite memories at all?
Well, yeah, there's quite a lot, actually. I think probably one of the greatest thrills I ever had was about 1970, 1971. We actually gave a Hammond C3 to the Pope in the Vatican, and we spent the most marvellous day in the Vatican. Actually, it's quite funny, really, because one of the cardinals asked if we would care to take lunch with him, and we went down this beautiful corridor where there were paintings like I've never seen, and into the cardinal's suite of rooms. And do you know what was behind the door? A little automatic organ. And I'll tell you, it was a Hammond, it was a Piper, which was the first of the single keyboard organs, and that's where he got his enjoyment from. So that was certainly one. And you know, you get lots and lots of highs. You get a lot of lows in this business, but that is music. That is a music business, and if you're in it, you know, either as the boss man or not, well, then it doesn't really matter. You know, I've only said boss man because there's a big Tim Flint sitting opposite me with boss written all across his chest.
We'll no doubt have a chance to speak to Tim, but for the moment, Bryan...
He talks, does he? Does Tim? He don't. I've never heard him talk, you know.
Occasionally.
Occasionally?
You
could live with that.
Occasionally, sensibly as well.
Yeah, I know. He's always giggling, but, I mean, that might be something to do with his head being cold. He's that damn tall. He's up in the clouds, you know.
Bryan, many thanks for
and
sparing a
too,
little
Ian.
bit of time.
No, it's great.
on
It's a
this
pleasure.
occasion.
Great, it's a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.